Were you parentified as a child? And if you were, how do you heal? What are the common problems that come out of being parentified? We're going to talk about that, so stay tuned. For those of you who are new to my channel, my name is Barbara Heffernan, and I am a psychotherapist who's been helping people recover from parentification as well as anxiety, trauma, other issues for over 20 years. And I started this online business, an online coaching business and YouTube channel to try to help more people access tools to live a more joyful life. So if you support what I'm doing here, please subscribe to my channel, give me a thumbs up on this video, and leave me a comment below. Let me know what you think. Let me know other topics you want me to address, and I will respond back. Last week I released a video called Parentification and the 7 Signs That You've Been Parentified, and I will link that here. So if you haven't watched that and you're not quite sure if you've been parentified or not, that channel will explain it. In this video, I'm really going to talk about the problems that come out of parentification and how you heal. So research has shown that people who are parentified as children and grew up in dysfunctional family systems where they had to take on the role of the parent to either their parent or their siblings in a way that was not age appropriate, people who grew up that way might be fairly successful in society. They might have achieved a fair number of things in life and they might even feel like the coping skills that they developed as children really helped them achieve this and this and this and this. And yet, inside, they may feel very dissatisfied. They might feel like a fraud. They might have very dysfunctional personal relationships. They may be extremely anxious, and they might always be resentful. So I go through some of this in that video I did last week, but if you are experiencing any of those things, if you feel like you are the caretaker in all of your relationships, if you feel like you are the one who is always giving advice to everybody and then you're frustrated that other people aren't following it, or you are in a marriage where you take care of everything and your spouse is fairly dysfunctional, it is likely that you grew up parentified. Other signs that you might have grown up parentified include not trusting other people, feeling like I'm the only one I can trust, I'm the only one I can rely on, I can't rely on anybody else. So that's the problem. What's the solution? I'd say that step number 1 for healing from having been parentified as a child is to really understand what that means. Understand what it is you lived through and begin to see it through a child's eyes. The problem is that if you've been parentified, you probably as a child kind of were aligned in your view of the world with a parent, or it might have been an idealized parent, or it might have been your actual parent, but you probably view your childhood through a parent's eyes. So part of the experience of beginning to understand why what happened to you wasn't appropriate is to really begin to see it through a child's eyes and allow yourself to feel that and understand it on a deep level. So I would say that that is step number 1. Step number 2, having done that or while doing that, is to really understand what patterns of relationship you learned. So what your habitual patterns are. For example, the habitual pattern of feeling that you are responsible for other people's emotions. That is very common among parentified children. So feeling that if your spouse is anxious or depressed, that it's your job to fix that, that is part of the habitual pattern that you learned as a child, and until you go back and heal, it will be very hard to change those habitual patterns. And I also talk about this in a video I released a couple of weeks ago. It was a live video on Facebook called Emotional Enmeshment. So I will link that video here also. So if you want more information on what emotional enmeshment means, because these issues are all integrated, tied together. So once you've understood what habitual patterns you learned and how you're recreating or reenacting those patterns in your current day life, step 3 is to begin to practice different patterns, which will be uncomfortable. It will be very uncomfortable. If you are the caretaker in a relationship and you step back from that role, you will feel a lot of anxiety, you will feel guilt, and you probably will need support to step back from that role. And yet stepping back from that role, changing your behavior is really what is going to integrate the changes that you need, because we learn with our frontal lobe, we learn with this part of our brain, and you can learn all sorts of things and not integrate it in terms of change because your habitual patterns are so strong. So to change those habitual patterns, you need to change your behavior, so you'll need support to do that. Step number 4 will be deeply understanding boundaries. Really understanding where you end, where another person begins, what's your responsibility, what's their responsibility, what you can and can't control. Boundaries, your physical boundaries, emotional, sexual, and spiritual. Really a deep understanding of boundaries, practicing with new boundaries, practicing with boundary setting, knowing that you're setting boundaries for yourself. So that is step number 4. Step number 5 is deep self-knowledge. Understand what your emotions are communicating to you. If you're feeling resentment, it probably means you're doing too much for somebody else. Or resentment can mean you're expecting something from somebody else that you shouldn't expect because they've already proven that they're not going to do it. So resentment can be a signal to us. All of our emotions are a signal to us that if we really learn how to tap into those emotions, how to understand what they're communicating to us, we can change our behavior, we can change how we feel, we can validate ourselves, we can achieve what we want to achieve because we will know what that is, because we'll be in touch with our emotions. And this is a little bit of an aside, but there has been some research on people who had brain damage in their emotional region. So they were left with their rational cognitive brain, but they didn't really have access to an emotional field. And people would maybe think, oh, well, if they're super rational, they'll make great decisions. But actually, they couldn't make decisions at all, because we make decisions when we integrate our reason and our emotion. And to do that, we need to understand what we're feeling. So that's step number 5, deep emotional knowledge and self-understanding. And I'm going to throw in there self-compassion as well, but we'll include that as like 5B, because once you truly understand your own emotions, you will have more self-compassion, I promise. And then step number 6 is grieving childhood. You have something to grieve. For some people who still retain this vision of an idealized parent, they need to grieve the fact that their parent actually was not as ideal as they thought they were, or that they will never have an ideal parent. So there's a grieving of that, but then there's also a grieving of you lost your childhood. Like there's sadness there. And there are ways to bring it back. There are things you can do to bring in some play and joy and let yourself experience some of what you missed, but there's still something to grieve. So I would say those are the 6 steps that you need to take. Now, how do you take them, right? You're probably listening to me saying like, yeah, oh, that's all well and good, but how do I do this? Part of it is learning. Part of it is reading books or researching on the internet and sort of understanding things. However, as I said, until you can really integrate it and practice it, and probably practicing this will need a lot of support. So there's a number of ways to go about this. One of the ways to go about this is therapy, really having a therapist who understands these issues and can help you walk through them. And also, as I said, focus on your behavior, not just changing how you're thinking about things, but actually practicing new behaviors. So therapy can help. 12-step groups can be awesome. If you qualify for a 12-step group, if you have a spouse who's an alcoholic or a loved one who's an addict of any sort, you can go to the Anon groups, Al-Anon, Nar-Anon. If you have somebody in your life who's a gambling addict, or if you have addictions yourself, if you have an eating disorder, there are 12-step programs for all sorts of things. And 12-step programs are really terrific cognitive behavioral programs. I mean, obviously that's not how they started, but they work on how you view the world and they work on changing behaviors. And the Anon programs really work on these issues of boundaries and relationships. And I highly recommend them, and they're free. And then I've also developed a coaching program called the Awaken Joy Journey, which I'm going to link here. And in this program, I go through what I consider the 4 pillars of joy. And I consider the 4 pillars of joy: mindfulness, healthy boundaries, healing your negative core beliefs, and deep self-knowledge. So the program really addresses all of these things. It doesn't specifically address the grieving of childhood, but that's something that we could talk about and work in individually, because the coaching program works in a group format, but there is individualized attention within that, and it is much less expensive than one-to-one therapy with me, and it is also all online. So check out that program. Any questions, let me know. You can set up a consult to talk about it, and you can also ask questions below. Again, just to reiterate, therapy, very helpful. I have a video on how to find an EMDR therapist, which actually can apply to any kind of therapist, and I will link that here. And 12-step programs, lots of information online about those programs. I think those can be very helpful. And obviously there are other means of spiritual growth and healing that can help you target some of these issues. And I really, really hope that you go down this path, that you seek healing for these things, because you can live a more joyful life. And if you were parentified as a child, you probably have awesome coping skills, and you probably have an awesome ability to take responsibility for yourself and for what you're feeling and what you're doing. And so you can make great progress. If you find the right healing modality, the right therapist to work with, the right program for you, you can do great. Truly, you can change these patterns and you can live a happier, more joyful life. I hope that was helpful. Let me know. I respond to all my comments on YouTube, so leave me a comment and I will see you later.